welcome back to the Bitcoin Business Bureau. I'm your host, as always, LitecoinLeader. I just did a little bit of a breakdown of some of the things I've been working on for the back of my business card and Nexo and a few things like that on how to, basically leverage with your Bitcoin. Now, leverage is a dangerous term. I understand that, but there's certain assumptions that we need to talk about, and when we all speak to one another, we get on the same page. Because keep in mind, I'm trying to help everybody, and everybody's trying to help one another. So I think that it's really important that we all make a few assumptions, get assumptions all on the same page. And I talked to him, Davey Daddy's a pretty smart guy. I will say that, and he told me a couple things, and he said whenever he starts a conversation or whenever he would start a meeting, and stay tuned for those. But he would say, let's all get on the same page. Let's go with a few assumptions. And then if we all agree with that and can nod our heads and yes, I agree with that, then we can continue. Because otherwise, if we're not on the same page, then the conversations that's going to ensue are not going to align, because you're going to think one thing and I'm going to think another. So today I just want to talk about some general assumptions for those of us who like cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin and altcoins and things like that. So if we all can agree to these things, I think that we can all work together and help each other and get on the same page a lot easier. So number one, we all agree that the US dollar is in trouble. And number two, we all agree that based on history and based on our current knowledge base, no purely government-backed only currency, which is called a fiat currency. No fiat currency has ever lasted, nor will ever last in perpetuity. Well, forever. It won't last forever. The average, historically speaking, 5,000 years of history that we have, that we know of, we think. Talk more about that another day. But for today, over 50, assuming what we know in history, 5,000 years of history of different civilizations, different empires, the Romans, the Greeks, the Aztecs, pick one, Incas, all their currencies eventually went away. We don't use them now. So there's your proof right now. We use US dollars. We use euros, which didn't exist a while ago. They replaced francs, liras, marks. So eventually currencies get replaced. And the ones that are backed by purely just a government or an entity without solid backing for it does not last. So, when the pound was tied to the pound sterling, it was the world currency, and it lasted for a while. When they went away from that, it ceased to be the world currency. US dollar used to be gold backed. Now it's no longer gold backed, and not even in a fraction. It was fractional, I believe, in the 30s or 40s. Bretton Woods was a certain fraction. And then in 1971, we just dropped all that. Forget it. So that's different. So now, in the last 50 years, we have a completely fiat currency in the United States. So if we agree that the US dollar is basically going to die at some point, I think that the present inflation kind of hints that it's getting soon. So our first assumption is that the US dollar is going to die at some point. So let me back up even further. Let's start with the basic premise that we all want to store our wealth. And this was mentioned in the video, but we all want to store our wealth. We don't want to lose our value over time. We don't want to lose that to anything, inflation, cost of other things going up, and value is all relative to one or another thing, and we'll get to that in a moment. But for right now, we can all say that we want to preserve our wealth and create generational wealth if we can, so we can pass it down. But at least we want to maintain our purchasing power today and increase it if we work to add value to the world and get compensated for that, such as people contributing to my Patreon, or people going to work and working for someone else, or whatever they need to do, and they receive a paycheck. That is a evaluation of their labor. So assumption number three is that you would rather have based on 1 and 2, you would rather have something that holds value over time versus to be paid for that labor. You will not have it in a form of currency that holds its value over time, rather than one that just erodes over time. So going back to points 1 and 2, historically, fiats don't last. And so why would you want to get paid in a fiat currency? What has lasted? Good question. Gold and silver have been around for 5,000 years, used as a form of monetary form in the predominant part of the world for most of that duration of time. So people will change their flavors of like what art that they appreciate, or what else has value. Look at the tulips back in the 1620s, I think it was. Those values are fleeting, but if it's backed by something that's historically, we have 5,000 years of proof, so they say, that gold has been worth something. So a suit of armor in the Middle Ages cost 1 ounce of silver. A finely tailored suit right now costs roughly 1 ounce of silver, or I'm sorry, 1 ounce of gold. That would be a cheap suit, but it might probably was made partly from silver. So back in the Middle Ages, a suit of armor cost 1 ounce of gold, whereas today a finely tailored suit would cost about 1 ounce of gold. They kind of hold their same value in purchasing power. So we want to maintain our wealth. We want to maintain our purchasing power. Let's pick something that's going to hold that value over time. Here's what we can also assume, that the US dollar and all fiat currencies are eventually going to go to zero. So holding our value in any of those fiat currencies, we have to all agree, is a bad idea. At least it's not going to hold value over time. And I'm sorry, I've got green tinge on my hair because my green screen isn't working properly. So I'm using the false background, but hey, I'll deal. So here we go. So we all agree with those assumptions, right? Fiats go to zero. We want to get paid for our value. We want to maintain our wealth, and we want to keep it for as long as we can, or even have it go up in value. So why would you ever get it in a fiat currency? You would want to get it in something else. One example is gold or silver or precious metals. You could pick art, but that's kind of a fleeting thing. It kind of almost goes in the category of tulips. Real estate is yes, they're allegedly not making more, but volcanoes do actually make more. That more land does happen, not desirable land or anything, but I mean, it does happen. But for the most part, they aren't essentially making more in your lifetime. But the value of that real estate varies based on the marketplace. So it doesn't really hold value over time. Essentially, yes, but really it's the value of the improvements in the location of it. So it's a good option, but not maybe the best. So we do know gold is worked pretty darn well. So now enter in the properties, enter in a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, and the comparisons of the forms of Bitcoin, the properties of money of Bitcoin compared to the properties of gold. The properties of money as defined are durability. Gold, it could be destroyed in some way, but it will last for a long time. I don't know how long. I think gold lasts for a long time. So will Bitcoin, because it's on the computer, and then the computers will last forever. The computer, maybe not the particular computer, but another version of the computer, then another version of the computer. So it essentially live on the internet in perpetuity. So Bitcoin will last forever. Divisibility, there's lots of decimal places for Bitcoin. You can slice gold into ounces, small tenths of ounce, whatever, you can do that. So durability, divisibility, fungibility, that means every ounce is essentially the same, or every Bitcoin is essentially the same, and that's true. Scarcity, there's where we're starting to get into some interesting stuff. Scarcity, they can actually find more gold. In fact, I think there was a story last year, a year before, where they found a mountain of gold in Africa, and the governance of the village or maybe it might have been the country, just kind of like sectioned off and said, no, don't go in there, you can't have it, because they don't want everybody getting wealthy all of a sudden because, hey, we found more gold. Government basically confiscated it. So they can find more gold. We can even find possibly on another planet or asteroid or something. We can even easier, not necessarily easier, but it's certainly easier going into outer space. But we can do nuclear fusion and take two elements and splice them together in the modern form of alchemy and make gold. That can be done. So in essence, you can make more gold, you can make more silver, so on and so on. So a precious metal, it doesn't necessarily have a finite supply, because more can be discovered locally on our planet, can be discovered out extraterrestrially, and we could also make it in the lab. Bitcoin, there's the code, 21 million, that's all it's ever going to be. And if anyone ever asks you, the simple proof is the only people that get to change the code or the code that Bitcoin is running are the miners, and the miners have zero financial incentive to make more Bitcoin beyond the current supply, because supply goes up, price goes down, they lose money. That won't happen. So we got durability, we got fungibility, portability. That's the other thing. Portability of Bitcoin is pretty strong because it basically goes wherever the internet goes, and you can even go into outer space. Gold, it's dangerous to even move it from physical location to physical location, let alone to another country. You have to get special planes, special trucks, security, all that stuff. It's not easy to move. I mean, you can take in a couple ounces and stick it in your pockets and go. You can do that, sure. But as far as paying a government $1 trillion in gold, that's not so easy. I mean, the weight adds up quickly. So Bitcoin, you could send however many Bitcoin you want electronically. It'll be there in an hour or less most of the time, depending on the speed of the network. But even the Lightning Network, you could be there a couple minutes, minimal fee, virtually no chance. There's really no chance of theft, because as long as you control both wallets and the private keys, you're secure. So, and don't get me started on the quantum financial thing. Please don't get me started there. So if we're all in the same assumptions here, that Bitcoin is a desirable store of wealth and value, we can then start to have discussions such as, is it better to have, say, 1 Bitcoin, or is it better to have 2 Bitcoin and the equivalent of 1 Bitcoin as a fiat loan? Because, past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results, but we kind of know where things are headed in the crypto world. So we all have to agree and say, in the future, would you rather have $100,000 of US dollars, or would you have in today's value? Doesn't matter what today is. It could be today, tomorrow, 6 months from now. Would you rather have $100,000 in the form of US dollars, or would you have $100,000 in the form of Bitcoin? And the decision is you have to hold it in that form for 10 years. Which would you rather have, US dollar or Bitcoin? And if you're in this crypto community, you're all on the same page, we're all nodding our heads, we all know what the answer is. So that's why I accept Bitcoin. So there's our assumptions for today. I just want to get everybody online on the same page. If you're with me, hop on over to Patreon. We're talking a lot more about Nexo and how to do this, and a term called reverse fractional banking, which is kind of fun. And it's a lot of fun. This community, we're all here to help each other to move from one financial system to another, and we all believe it's the better one. So with all that said, I'll close the door on the bureau, and I'll see you next time.